back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings. Thank you guys for joining us today. We have an awesome guest, and I'm so glad to introduce him. This man wears many, many, many hats. Jamel Gibbs. He is a successful real estate investor, marketer, serial entrepreneur, podcast host, speaker, mentor. He'll get into a lot of that. But he has an awesome podcast that he hosts and a real estate investing academy where he's teaching hundreds of thousands, really, of investors on how to build success through real estate. So if you guys can welcome with me, Jamel Gibbs.
Hey, how's everything?
Good. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining us today.
I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to providing some value and hope that somebody else can benefit from this information.
Absolutely. And you already provide tons of information. And so I'm definitely going to make sure people know how to connect with you and how to watch you and follow you. But just with all the hats that you wear, and you kind of transitioning into helping others learn about just the journey of real estate, how to really be successful at it. What kind of led you down that journey? How did your real estate journey start? And kind of what are the headaches, the bumps that you've got to overcome to be able to start giving people and to be able to create success in their businesses?
Yeah, well, first off, again, I definitely appreciate you having me. And I love the name Lessons, the Blessings. I'm hoping that I can provide some information that can lead people to where they want to be in their life as well. I started off in real estate in 2002. I started.
Wow, okay.
Started off as a real estate agent. Then I became a real estate broker shortly after that in New York City. And then a couple months after that, it took me about 13 months to really figure things out. I became an investor. And what led me to that was just kind of seeing some of the success that some of my clients that I was working with at that time, who weren't real estate agents, but they were investors. They were having a ton of success. So it naturally led me into wanting to do the same thing. And I remember there was a guy in my office named Brent who was a real estate agent, but he owned multiple apartment buildings in Fort Greene and Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
And, he was relatively young at the time. I believe he was 27, a little older than I was. I was 21.
Yeah.
And he said, this is the secret. This is how I'm able to do this. He said, I own cash flowing properties. And that kind of got me started in real estate itself. So done a couple of deals in Brooklyn, moved to Pennsylvania in 2006. I bought a couple of hundred houses in Pennsylvania.
Just a couple of hundred.
And then that's kind of where I really got my feet wet in understanding how wholesaling works. Accidentally started wholesaling real estate, accidentally started doing lease options and creative real estate investing and things like that. Due to certain
how was that accidental journey? So what tripped you into the wholesaling and the creative financing and what you created in Pennsylvania? And because you found a niche, right? Like you stumbled around a bit and then you kind of, this is a lane and I'm going to milk this lane, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Help, because a lot of people can be everywhere, right? Like they got squirrel syndrome, right? Just, they can focus on a million different things. Talk about just how you honed in on that. What was the key thing that kind of had you dial in?
Yeah, super important question. I love the fact that you mentioned hone in. Squirrel syndrome is definitely something that a lot of people have because you got a lot of moving shiny objects these days, right? So you can do this, you can do that, but you really can't be great at everything. The reason why I was bouncing around is due to circumstances I was living at that time. So just to give you an example, my first real estate deal, actual investment deal, I didn't even know what I was doing. And I flipped a commercial property, right? Wow. Now, when I say commercial, most people think about apartment buildings or they'll think about strip malls and stuff like that. No, I flipped a business by accident. I knew somebody who had it was a sandwich shop in Fort Greene, and he wanted a certain amount. I believe it was like $40,000 for it. And I knew somebody who wanted to buy a sandwich shop. So I just put the two together. I said, pay me $1,500. I'll put you two together, and
Nice.
we'll all walk away. It was a handshake deal, no paperwork signed or anything. But that's
Can't get
how
away with that today,
you
huh?
really can't, and honestly, it was an accidental way of wholesaling a business or wholesaling real estate. Some
Yeah,
people call it that a commercial deal, right?
yeah,
So that's kind of how I figured out, okay, if I can do that on a business, I can probably do that on a house. And they didn't
yeah.
have home study courses, they didn't have all this stuff, the information that we have today
Right.
that, you know, if I would have had this information today, I would be light years ahead of where I am. But honestly, I had to figure this stuff out as I went on. I made a ton of mistakes, and I realized that I can do that in real estate as well. So I just started finding houses. I didn't call it wholesale, I called it flipping contracts back then.
Yeah,
And I just started flipping contracts and making a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there. Then lo and behold, it became this term called wholesaling. Over after 2006, people started calling it that.
right.
Um, while I was wholesaling, I was also pretty good at finding deals. Naturally, being a wholesaler, so I started doing what's called the BRRRR strategy. We didn't, again, another term that since 2014, 2015,
Right.
BRRRR started coming into
Started coming out. I
play.
didn't even know it was a thing either. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, is this what I'm doing?"
Right, but we were doing that years
Way before.
beforehand, right?
Yeah.
So I would buy a house, I would put 10 or 20 grand into it. I would refinance with a small commercial bank, local commercial bank, and take out a portfolio loan or a commercial loan, and then pull out 80% of the value, and then keep rinsing and repeating the same thing. And I was also fixing and flipping houses at that time as well. So this is all between 2002 to 2008, where I just was pretty successful just doing multiple things in real estate. And then the market tanked and
Yeah.
my legs were pulled from under me.
I understood
And
that.
I was caught out there with a tremendous amount of private lender debt on 10, maybe 15 rehabs we were doing at the time. And I couldn't keep up with everything. I made it my business to make sure that every single private lender got back their investment, because the relationship to me at that point was more important than the money I was going to lose.
Absolutely.
Right. So I took
Absolutely.
a hit. I took a major hit in my real estate business. But guess what? Every single relationship I had back then respected me even more because I did what I said I was going to do.
Yep.
So that's
Absolutely.
one key thing. If I can share anything on this podcast, if you get in a business and you build relationships, this is a relationship business, real estate.
That's key.
Always do what you say you're gonna do all the time, even
Yep.
if it hurts you. Right? It might hurt temporarily, but in the end, it's gonna benefit you long term.
Definitely. Definitely.
So
Pays dividends for sure.
that's right.
Yeah.
So from there, I had to pivot, make a transition. I didn't want to take out any more debt, even if it was private funding, in order to purchase more real estate. I stayed in the game, and I realized that I didn't need funding for wholesaling. So I started doing a lot more wholesale deals just to
Gotcha.
pay my bills, to
Hmm.
generate capital. In addition to that, I accidentally learned how to do lease options and some creative finance stuff. So my first creative deal was in 2008. There was a guy who owned the property. It was the property was worth about 100 grand. He had a small grease fire, which turned into, well, he didn't have it. It was a adjoining houses in
Okay.
Reading, Pennsylvania, and the neighbor, his house caught on fire because of the grease fire. It spilled over into this guy's property, and he ended up having to take an insurance claim out on it.
Yeah.
He owned 10 houses at the time. I ended up doing deals with him on all of them, but on this particular one, he said, "Look, if you're willing to give me, a few $1,000s down, I'll allow you to lease purchase this thing from me, and you can just kind of take over the payment." So I agreed to do that. His payment was $430. Now when I say take over the payments, most people think subject to, but this was a true lease purchase opportunity for me,
Yeah.
right? So I signed a lease purchase with him. I gave him like $5,000 down or something like that. I can't remember the exact amount.
Yeah.
He owed 40. That's all he wanted out of the deal. I knew it
Yeah.
was worth 100. So what did I do? I signed an agreement with him, a lease purchase at
Yeah.
$430 a month with 5 grand down. I went and put an ad in a newspaper. They don't do that these days, but that's what we did. And I found a buyer for $70,000 with $10,000 down. And the house didn't really need any work. All it needed was carpet. Everything else in it was brand new because the insurance took care of the house.
Yeah.
So I ended up selling it on a lease purchase to the end buyer, 70 grand, $10,000 down,
Right.
and $1,000 a month.
Right. So you
So
just made the net off that.
I
So
made the net,
you kept the contract and then you leased it back
subleased it
to.
out to somebody else, and then he
Nice.
closed on it a year later, and I ended up making it was $600 a month times 12. What is that? 7,200. I made the
Yeah.
10,000 up front, and then I
Nice.
also made the back end profit because that 10 grand. So it was like another 25 grand on the back, something like
Yep.
that. 20 grand maybe on the back end. So total with basically nothing out of pocket because really the
Yeah.
buyer took care of the down payment. I made close to like 30 to 40 grand on that house for doing nothing. And
That's
I
great.
said, that's a play. I want to take that and run with it. And I
How
built my
how
business around that.
how do you, just to segue a little bit, I'm gonna
Mhm,
keep you on your journey story,
mhm.
but how does that play out in today's market? Like, is that a play?
It's
Because
a fantastic opportunity.
lease options are coming back.
Yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity. It
Yeah.
never really went anywhere. People
Right.
are just,
Right.
for me, they just people. There's a lot of hype in the market, right? And there's a lot of educators. And I get it. A lot of people trying to participate in providing value, which I definitely appreciate. But really, any strategy can work in any market. Now, granted, there's a fix and flip opportunity in a certain market. Like right now, with higher interest rates, people might think fix and flip isn't the best play, and it's not. But can you still fix and flip? Absolutely. You just got to be willing to get it at the right price range to
Right.
be able to sell it so that it balances out and the mortgage isn't,
For
um,
sure.
too high for the buyer.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a strategy for every market. But one thing I learned is wholesaling and creative finance is a strategy for every market. Buying rental properties is a strategy for every market. The interest rate back in 2006 was way higher
For
than
sure.
what it is today.
Yeah, definitely.
People are just used to having 2 and 3% interest over the last couple of years.
For sure.
They think that that's normal, right? But
Yeah.
again, there's a play for every market. But certain plays, creative finance, wholesaling, things like that, that's a it doesn't matter what's going on in the market with those types of opportunities because there's really no funding, there's no financing coming out of your pocket. It's
Right.
all asset based financing at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, no, completely makes sense. Completely makes sense.
Yeah. So like
So go ahead.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say I build new construction as well. I stopped that 3 years ago. Well, 2018, we built like 33 houses. I stopped because I saw what was going to happen in the market. Now, I wish
Yeah.
I would have held on to the pandemic, but who knew that was going to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's a play for every market. Certain strategies, rehabbing, new construction, and things like new construction is a pretty good play right now as well. But um, with the interest rates going up, I don't want to have my feet taken out from under me like 2008. I learned my
No,
lesson,
absolutely. Absolutely. And
and
that's, and it's funny
Mhm,
that you said that there's a play for every market, because I was actually headed that way, is that I don't think there's ever a bad time to buy real estate. You just need
ever
to know what strategy you're going to play
adjust,
for the
pivot.
market you're in,
That's
right?
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
if you're in North Carolina, if you're in, New York, or if you're in Phoenix, what's the interest rate? What's the temperature of the market?
Hmm.
In 2023, what do you, and I know you said there's wholesaling, creative financing, like you can make that play anywhere if you can find a good deal.
Hmm.
But what are the strategies that you believe in this market, 2023, you know, high inflation,
Hmm.
high interest rates, low supply, right? What do you think are the best tools or best strategies that people can use in this market to get into real estate, especially if they're new?
Guess what? it circles right back around to what I was talking about before, wholesaling and creative finance.
Yeah.
Why? Right? Wholesaling and creative finance doesn't force you to take out debt to be able to buy real estate. You can create terms directly with the seller. So I'll give you an example. There's a seller that one of my student partners and I were just talking about or talking to yesterday. This guy just bought the house a year and a half ago. He can't make the monthly payments. He bought it too high
Yeah.
during the peak of the pandemic where houses were selling for ridiculous amounts of money.
Yep.
He got a great interest rate, 3.75 compared to today.
Yep.
So guess what we do? We create a subject to deal out of it, right? That's a creative
And
finance
explain
opportunity.
subject to for our audience, for those that don't know.
Yeah, so subject to is basically allowing you to take over the seller's mortgage payments on the property. The deed goes into your name, meaning the
Yep.
title of the property goes into your name. You become the sole owner of the property, but the mortgage stays in the seller's name. So, a couple of things. If you don't make the monthly payments, it's really on the seller and you can destroy the seller's credit. But another thing with that is if you don't make the monthly payments, it's bank fraud, right? It becomes fraud at that point. The seller can sue you, you can get into some trouble. So
Right.
you want to make sure that when you agree to do these types of deals, you understand the ramifications of them, but you also do what you say you're going to do. You see how that circles back around?
Right. Circles right back around.
Do what you
Absolutely.
say you're going to do, because then you won't have anything to worry about. Then there's another type of uh, loan that you can do, usually on government backed loans, where you can take over a seller's terms and payments and the
Right.
amount that they owe as well. But that's
Yep.
not considered to be subject to, So um, these opportunities are out there. That, by the way, that particular type of loan is called an assumable loan.
Right.
When
Exactly.
you're
Assumable.
doing
Yep.
government backed loans, right? So
Yeah.
you have an assumable loan, you have subject to two different types of
For sure.
things, because with an assumable loan, that loan goes into your name. You
Yes.
just pick up the terms that the seller had. With the subject to, you're taking over the seller's payments
Yep.
and the ownership goes to you.
Yep.
Okay. You also have wraparound mortgages and things. There's different avenues that you can play around with, but in this market, wholesaling, because it doesn't require you to take out any debt, and creative finance, because you can negotiate 0% interest. I got a student, we just negotiated 3 rental properties, 0% interest on these deals. You're not going to find that right now. You're going to pay 6 to 8% interest right now.
Now,
Or
how do you work that one? That's just give it a little bit of insight because that one's new to me. So
yeah, so we simply don't mention anything about the interest. We just offer equal monthly payments, right? But built into those equal monthly payments, we're paying a set amount every month, which is
got you.
coming off the purchase price. So if we agree to, let's say, $100,000 for a property, I'll say, look, I'll make equal monthly payments for, let's say 60 months rather than 5 years. Different,
Right.
same terminology,
Yeah.
different way of saying it. 60 months, I'll make 60 payments in the amount of 1,000, or I'll make 60 payments in the amount of $500 to you. After the 60 payments are up, I'll give you a lump sum at the end. So rather than me saying anything about interest, I'm going to say
Right.
all of these payments are going to come off of the price and then you'll get the rest at the end.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Some sellers are a little more savvy, where they might ask for, hey, okay, I'll do this, but I want 3% interest. Okay, I'll pay 3%. I'm not going to pay 6 though. You understand what I
Exactly.
mean? And that's
Yeah.
where you negotiate.
Yep. Absolutely.
With subject to types of deals on the other end, you might, I'm looking for opportunities in this market where people bought with a lower interest rate than
Absolutely.
what's available today. If I
Yeah.
find those opportunities, I'm creating a deal out of it,
Yep.
versus paying 6 and 7 and 8%, which kills your cash flow.
Absolutely.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I want to find people who paid that 2.5, 3, 4% interest, even 5%. I don't care. It's
Yep.
less than what it is today. As long as
Yeah.
as long as I work the numbers and the property cash flows, I really don't care what the amount is.
And
You know
that's
what I
the
mean?
key that you're honing in on, right? Like
Hmm.
I tell people, like you got to buy right. Like
Yep.
as long as you buy right, the numbers work,
That's
then
it.
you can
That's all that
survive any
matters.
market, right?
Yep.
Because the rents
Exactly.
will always keep it cash flowing until you have to transition, right? That's kind
That's
of what
right.
saved me during the first kind of Great Recession back in
Hmm.
2008
08.
9
Yep.
period. So that I just want to hone in on that too, because
There's a
there's so
lot we
many
can
people
cover for
who've been
sure.
smashed by that, right? And that's where a lot of opportunities are falling out now, is those people you talked about a little bit, owners who's they over leveraged, right? They bought these,
During the
really
pandemic.
expensive. They bid way over for, because in the hype of the market during the COVID period. And so now those opportunities are now coming back to the market. So I love that you're finding those little niches. Okay, there's opportunities. These people who got into interest rates low, but they paid way too much, right? And people are starting. I'm definitely seeing it more, student loans or even seller financing coming.
Yeah,
That
for
being a
sure.
thing now is like, hey, I've had this for years. I think this is the right time to get out because the market's kind of coming down. Let me exit, but I'm gonna hold it for 5 years, give you a certain interest rate, and then you can kind of buy, no prepayment, right? To,
Hmm.
to make sure that if you decide you want to buy it in two or whatever. So yeah, there's so many interesting things coming out. So I really definitely wanted to get your take on, just the because there's so many strategies. There's nothing new under the
Yeah.
sun. Kind of like what you're
Nothing.
talking about. They called it this during this,
Yep.
but it's the same
Yep.
strategies. It's just it's
Same thing.
twisted, it's
Even
manipulated a little
innovation,
bit
like
differently.
you got you got people talking about novation agreements. All that is a partnership between you and the seller. There, I mean, they put a fancy name on it, yeah, but
Yeah,
that's nothing new. It's been around for years. I've been doing novation deals, if you want to call it that, for years.
yeah.
So
And that is a new term. That is a
it
new
is
term
it's a
that's
new
coming out
term,
too.
but it's there's nothing new about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
lease purchases are really good right now. I consider that to be creative finance as well.
yeah,
But lease purchases are really good for people that, especially during the pandemic, overpaid for real estate. The values have dropped a little bit. I'm
yeah.
thinking during this year, 2023, the values might come down a little bit,
That's
not
the
much.
hope.
I
Yeah,
don't think it's gonna get hit hard. We might lose 5%, maybe 10. I've seen as high as 20, but then it's gonna start trickling back up slowly, right? So
understood. Yep.
lease purchases, in my opinion, are good for that particular situation, because what you do in that circumstance, rather than doing, let's say, a short sale will be good in a market like this too, right? I'm not a fan of short sales because it takes forever to get paid on those, right?
Right.
So what do? You create a long-term lease option, right? You do like a 10-year lease on the property. And what happens is, over that 10-year time frame, you're building equity in the property. Now, instead of it being underwater, it becomes a viable deal again.
That's
So
good.
every single payment that you make pays off some of the principal balance that's on the property. And then
Yeah.
over the years, real estate rises an average of what, 3 to 4% per year.
Right.
In
Yep.
10 years, you're talking about a 40% increase
Yeah.
in property value. You create the equity spread that way. Then you
That's
sell a
good.
property in 10 years. So
That's good.
long-term lease, just thinking outside the box and saying, okay, how
Absolutely.
can I put it together?
Yep, absolutely. If I
You
could
know,
create this, it's that possibility thinking space.
that's
And it's kind of like,
that's
think
right.
of where you want to be first and then work yourself backwards from it,
That's it.
right? Yeah,
That's
no,
all
that's
it
good.
is.
That's
So
good.
there's a solution for every problem. And as real estate investors, we're problem solvers.
Yep.
So I look at it like this: if we know how to find deals, we're marketers first. We got to know how to find the houses. Then we got to know how to solve the problems,
Yep.
right? So we're specifically looking for problems as investors. If we can solve the problem and no one else can, then
Yep.
we get the deal. And
Yep.
then we materialize the money as the investor at the end.
Yep. And
Yep.
so you talked about that first nugget is how do you find the deal? I'm a problem solver all day. I'm an engineer by
Yep.
trade, right? So that's my but I always tell myself, I'm like, I'm not really a marketer. I don't love marketing. I love creating solutions,
Mhm.
right? And so for those that are like, I'm not of that market mindset, how did you and you I could feel the hustle, the New York hustle in you already.
Yeah, I'm definitely I get my feet wet. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And so how have you gotten creative with just marketing? And I mean, probably back in the day, it was just knocking on doors, but
Mhm.
in this today, now you got social media, you got all these ways, people spending a lot of money, not necessarily finding their right target customer. How have you been able to hone in on your marketing, just what you've learned over the years?
I think, and that's a really good question. I think there's no people trying to sell you the idea that there's one strategy that works for everybody, and that's
Yeah,
not the case.
yeah,
Real estate is very local. You got to understand what's going on in your local
that's
market in
good.
order for you can't use a national approach in
Yeah,
a local area. You just can't. So you got to find out what's working in your own local area. So
that's good.
even in my, not the not to talk about coaching or anything like that, no shameless plugs, but
Yeah, no, you good. You
when
good.
I work with coaching students, they'll tell you none of them are using the same strategies. Every single person has a different circumstance and a different market that they live in.
Yeah,
Everybody has a different goal that they want to hit, so everybody is doing something completely different than the next
that's good.
person,
Yeah,
but moving towards the end goal, which is
yeah,
their success, right?
yeah,
Same thing when you're marketing. You can't use the same. There's certain strategies, yes, that you can apply, but you got to see what's working locally. So if I had to take all of this and say, okay, look, if I want to wholesale houses, I'm gonna market one particular way, and I'll get into this in just a second. If I want to buy rental properties, that opens up a different type of door than what I can do, whatever I'm doing in wholesaling, but I can still open up the doors for realtors and other wholesalers. So
right.
let them do the work to
Yeah,
find me the deals, and I'll just make the offers.
right.
If I'm doing creative finance deals and wholesaling, just circling back around to that, I'm
Yeah,
going direct to seller. I'm not trying to negotiate a creative finance deal through a realtor. I'm not saying that
right.
it can't be
Exactly.
done,
For sure.
but I want to talk to the seller
Absolutely.
and have
Yeah,
a conversation. I can't do that if I'm trying to do deals with realtors.
yeah,
Can't do that if I'm trying to do deals with wholesalers. If I'm paying cash for a property, realtors and wholesalers come into play.
yeah,
If I need creative finance opportunities, if I need wholesale deals and I need to negotiate cash prices or wholesale prices, then I'm going direct to the seller.
yeah,
Now, how do we find the seller is another thing, right? There's a tremendous amount of things you could do. What's going to be more effective for you, right? Because you have to sacrifice something. It's either going to be time or money,
yeah. That's
right?
good.
So here's the deal when it comes to that. Are you working a 9 to 5 job and you really can't put in the hours? You got to spend some money. You got to create a budget that you can stick to for at least 6 months,
Yeah.
because
To see
everybody
it
wants
work
to get
because it
paid in
takes time
30
for it to
days.
work. Yeah.
Everybody wants to get paid in 30 days because they're sold the idea.
Yeah.
That's fine, right? 99% of the people are not going to get paid in 30 days. I'm here to
Right.
tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It takes time to build a business,
Yep.
right? So don't expect to get paid overnight. If you get paid, that's great, but don't expect it.
Yep.
So give yourself at least 6 months of spending it, a minimum of what, $500 a month on some type of marketing, whether
Right.
I like direct mail personally if I'm going direct to seller, but then I use text messaging as a follow-up mechanism.
Yeah.
I use cold calling as a follow-up mechanism.
Yeah.
I use emails and things like that as follow-up mechanisms. Or you can, if you have the time but not a lot of money, you can drive around neighborhoods. You can pick up the phone and call people, get the
Yeah.
list, pick up the phone and call people. There's a tremendous
And be a
amount of things
and
you
be a
can
part of
do
the community, right? Like
and
I
be a
remember
part of the
finding a
community.
deal through. I was part of a community. I was rehabbing a particular unit. The
Mhm.
HOA president saw, hey man, she's doing really good in this
Yep,
property. Hey, I know this guy. He also lives in the community. He just wants to get out.
that's it.
And so just even I tell people like, look at what you have at your access. Like, what are you a
Yep,
part? What do you bring to the table? Like we underestimate sometimes like what do we
absolutely.
bring to the table, right? If I'm a community leader or if I'm someone well, guess what? I have a pulse on what's like you said, stay local, right?
Mhm.
If I have a pulse on what's going on in my local community, like use what you have at your fingertips. And I think some people don't assess, they just assume like, well, I don't have any money and I don't have time. But it's like you bring something to the table,
That's right.
your network, your who you're in contact with. It's just tapping into that. And I don't think people always know what's right there at their fingertips. You know what I mean?
You know what I call that? I call that an internal list, right? So an internal network. Number one, you like you said, community, right? You build, if everybody in your area knows what you do, who's the first person that they're gonna think about
Absolutely.
when they
Yeah.
find something. And
Yeah.
that's where referrals are some of my biggest paydays. You know, I
Yeah.
just bought a rental property that we just finished rehabbing. And you know, we're getting $1,000 a month for it right now. But my point is, I bought that off of a referral. I paid
Yeah.
somebody a referral fee because they sent me a lead, gave them
Nice.
$1,000, you know.
Yeah.
But the point is, like you said, build that internal list, follow up with people. Everybody should know what you do. That's
Yeah.
probably
That's
one of the
good.
best ways to market without spending money,
That's
you
good.
know.
That's good.
Yep.
So you're doing a million things. You got your real estate education, your
Mhm.
coaching. I mean, your you got a podcast. I mean, you're doing a lot. How
Got
do you
5 kids.
create?
I got
I'm
got a wife.
right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Outside of that's the business side. Then you get your personal side.
Hmm.
How do you create time freedom? Right, like how do you create that space? Because after a while, you're making the money, right? And so
Hmm.
it's like, well, I value my time. Like I told somebody the other day, I don't want to be a hustler no more.
Yeah,
I want to be a CEO now. Like
that's right.
I still spend a lot of my energy to create that wealth, right? And
Hmm.
so, like, how do you create that time freedom for yourself,
Oh,
just with
th-
everything you got on your plate?
there's a couple of things you're gonna have to hustle in the beginning, and that's a really good question. I just covered with somebody on my coaching call on Wednesday night, right? But um, you gotta, number one, you're gonna hustle in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? As you're hustling, you got to be smart. I was just telling my daughter this literally last night. You know,
Wow.
she's 17. She just finished high school. She graduated 6 months early. She flipped her first house at 14, made
That's dope. I
$13,000. So
love
she
it.
understands what goes into that.
Yeah.
But I told her, you got to hustle, right? You're gonna hustle for at least 3 years before you can really make a significant change in your life. 3 to 5 years is all it takes to of your life. Three to
Yeah.
five years of your life of working and grinding to really be able to make create a situation that will change your
Trajectory
entire
for sure.
life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The spectrum of where you're going with your life, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So, number one, as you're grinding, you got to build passive income streams. You
Yep.
have to, right? Because that passive income, that cash flow, allows you to be able to alleviate some of the time that you're putting in your business. When you
Yep.
have a consistent amount of money coming in from multiple resources, then you don't have to grind as hard to be able to find the next resource. Now, me, I want 1,000 different resources because I love my time, right?
Yeah.
So everything that I do, I'm trying to see how can I make cash flow out of this particular situation in order to be able to free up more time for me.
Yep.
My biggest
Yep.
thing is time and freedom,
Yep.
right? Freedom of choice, freedom for family, time for family, freedom to be able to do whatever I want, right? In
Yep.
order for me to achieve that, two things needs to take place. I need the cash flow, which we just spoke about.
Yep.
But number two, I also need to be strategic with my time, right?
Mm,
So I only work 3 days a week, and I'm usually working just a couple of hours during those 3 days. That's
nice.
done on purpose. I
Yeah.
don't work on Tuesday. I don't work on Friday. I know we're doing a podcast, but
Yeah.
this is not really work.
Yeah.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
work on Saturday. I don't work on Sunday, right? I don't work those days. I work Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I'm usually done by 3, maybe 4 o'clock, and I start at like 12 because I work out in the morning.
Got to get
Which
that in
I
because
gotta get that in.
that's wealth too.
That's wealth as well. I gotta take my kids to school. We
Yeah.
have a newborn, so my wife is she's up, so I'm taking the kids to school, right? Um, I gotta make sure that I get my mind right. I gotta read my scriptures. That's what I do.
That's real. Definitely.
And at the end of the day, so I'm taking care of my spiritual health. I'm
Yep.
taking care of my body,
Yep.
taking care of family,
For sure.
and I'll knock out 4 hours worth of work usually. And a lot of times I'm dropping my daughter off so she can do whatever she has to do for the day.
Yep.
So
So you're creating a schedule, like your time block and
it
your,
really is. I have certain blocks
yeah,
that I'll say I'll knock this out. And when I do, when that block is open and I know I have to go in, I'm not lollygagging, right? I'm not playing around during that time. I'm knocking it out. Usually, if I give myself an hour, I'm done in 10 minutes.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So it's really giving it 1,000% during that time. Like I
got
shoot a
you.
lot of YouTube content, right?
Yeah,
Um, I probably only shoot 2 days, maybe 3 days out of the month. The
got
rest
you.
of the month, the work is already done because I go
Got
all
you.
in. You know
Got
what I
you.
mean?
So you really eliminating all the distractions,
That's it.
clearly focused
Everything.
in on, yep,
Focus.
for this two
Yep.
hours, this is what we're gonna get done. Nothing's distracting me from that time period.
So how does that relate to real estate?
Yeah,
Right. If you're cold calling, for example, most people think they're working an 8 hour day,
yeah,
right? At a 9 to 5, most people are not working 8 hours. They're probably working 3, maybe 4 hours, right? Some people work a true 8 hour day, but most people don't, right?
understood.
You're not necessarily working. So what can you do rather than sitting on a computer, especially people sitting at a desk, rather than sitting
Yeah,
on a computer surfing social media, this time should be spent being productive. How can
yeah,
I be productive during this time?
yep,
Right. So how does it, circling back around, how does that equate to, let's say, real estate, cold calling, for example? Are you truly picking up the phone and calling as many people as possible during that 2 hour time slot?
yep.
Or are you making a few calls? Somebody calls you, you pick up the phone, your kids walk in, you're on social media, and then you make a few more calls.
Right.
That's not
That.
really giving it
Yep.
110%,
Yep. That's real.
you
That's
know?
real.
So
I've found that I have to take my phone and put it in a whole nother room so that there's no
yeah,
distraction
I cut it
whatsoever. I
off.
can just get
My phone is off.
concentrated, focused.
We're on a podcast, my phone is off.
Yep. Yep.
Focus. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good
And that
stuff.
that alone will separate you from 99% of people.
Oh, I can imagine that for
You,
sure.
you know. So
Absolutely.
just little things like that is how I manage my time well, and I build cash flow with the money. I don't live off of the money that I have to generate.
Mm-hmm.
I live off of the investment from the money that I've made. So basically, put it this way, let me simplify it. I use active income, which is going, I've never had a job, but in
Wow.
most people's cases, you have a job,
Yeah.
right? That's active income. You got to
Yep.
physically go make that money.
Yep.
Wholesaling is active income
For sure.
in real estate terms.
Yep.
I use the active income and invest it to create passive income streams, and I live off
Absolutely.
of the passive income
Yep.
streams.
That's good.
Yep.
That's good. I love it. Now you dropped so many nuggets. This is Lessons into Blessings. So before we finish out, I got to ask you, what is the biggest lesson or adversity you've experienced over your real estate journey? And what is the biggest blessing that you've been able to glean from it?
The biggest lesson I've learned over my real estate journey is, all right, so here's the deal. I wish I would have held on to more real estate earlier.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and you might hear a lot of people say this, right? So I wish I wouldn't have flipped so many houses. I
Yeah.
wish I wouldn't have rehabbed and sold so many properties. If I would have held on to more, then I would have materialized my goal a lot quicker, because
Mm,
it took me years to really understand the importance of cash flow. This is
gotcha.
something that nobody taught me. I had to learn it the hard way. I was making a ton of money. You imagine being, I made my first 7 figures by 25 years old. I was
Wow.
broke at 27.
Wow.
I had to make it all back by 30. I've been
Wow.
semi-retired, doing whatever I want since I was 30 years old.
Wow.
I'm about to be 42, right? The reason for that is because I built cash flow, right? That's something I did not have at 25,
Yeah.
because I was flipping everything. So imagine being 25 making 50 grand every month. You think it's going to be there forever.
Right.
So you're spending the money, right? It's like athletes. They make
Yeah.
millions of dollars
Yeah.
and they spend the money. When they
Right.
retire, they have to go work a job. A lot of them,
Yep.
right? That's because they don't have any cash flow. So
Right.
the biggest lesson that I would say I've learned: live below your means, which I definitely do. I live
Yeah.
on a portion of my income.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, build cash flow. If you're brand new to real estate, try and hold on to as much real estate as possible.
Yeah. I've
Because
been
when
hearing
you,
that more and more and more. Yeah,
yep,
absolutely. Yeah.
you will honestly materialize your goal a lot quicker.
Yeah.
That's just, and then once you hit the goal, let's say you need 20 grand a month in income. Once you hit 20 grand a month in income, then you can do whatever you want to do. If you want to flip
Yeah.
some houses, fine.
Yeah.
But build up your nest egg of passive income streams first, in my
That's good.
opinion,
That's
and
good.
then go out and do whatever you want to do. My daughters, I have 4 daughters and a son. All of them are going to be, from the time they get out of school till their mid 20s, they're going to be set based
That's
off of what I teach them,
that's good.
right? And then they can live the rest of their life doing whatever they want because they got
Yeah.
a continuous flow of cash flow coming
Yeah.
in every single month.
I love that. I
You know
love
what I
that
mean?
you set that floor. Your
That's right.
ceiling is their floor.
That's right.
So now that's where they start off at.
Yeah, and I
And
want
they
them to
just build
surpass
from
me.
there.
It's not going to stop. I'm going to be
Yeah.
their business partner if necessary, but I want them to surpass me. We're
Yeah.
building real generational wealth over here.
That's real right there.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So my kids won't have to, especially my girls. My son, you know, he's going to be fine, but my girls, I want to make sure that they don't have to rely on anybody. You know what
Yeah,
I
that's
mean?
real.
That's important to me.
That's good. That's good. I love it.
So that's one lesson that I've learned: build cash flow sooner.
Yeah.
One blessing, I want to say this. So understand where you're going, and if you understand where you're going, you there's a 1,000% chance you're going to get there. But you got to be really crystal clear on where you're going. Most people don't know what they want. It took
Yeah.
me years to figure out what I really wanted, and that's why I was wholesaling and flipping houses and spending up all the money.
Yeah.
I realized as I grew my family that time and freedom was the most important thing to me. That's why I only work 3 days a week, right? So understand what your end goal is. What do you
That's
want your
good.
life to look like? Forget about social media, forget about, all of the stuff other people have, and realize what you want first.
Exactly.
Design that in your mind and
Yep.
then go after it.
Yep.
You have to have a destination. You don't get into a car and put the car in drive to circle the block 1,000 times. You don't do
Right.
that. Usually when you get into the car, you're going to the grocery store. You
Yeah.
got things, you got a destination. You got
Yep.
pick up the kids from school, you got to go to work or whatever. You have a place you're going. And there's nothing that's going to stop you from getting there
Yep.
because the goal is clear.
Yep.
If you need milk, you go to the grocery store. I'm going to get in my car, put it in drive down the street to the grocery store, go walk into the grocery store, go to the refrigerator, get the milk, pay for it, and go back home. That's a
Exactly.
clear, that's crystal clear.
Yep.
I know exactly what I want.
And you know exactly what you want because you started with your why.
I started
Like
with
you
the
wanted
why.
it.
Why do I
Yeah.
need the milk? You know what I mean? So it's the same exact thing in business, right? You get into a car, you go down street number one, there might be a roadblock there, right? Are you going to stop and say, oh, I don't need it anymore, I'm just going to go back home?
Yeah.
Or are you going to find another way?
Yep.
Then you go down street number two, and it's the same thing. A tree fell down, or another roadblock, traffic, whatever the case may be. Do you
Yeah.
quit or do you find another way? And then you go down street number three, and it's a clear path. You have a clear destination. You have the vehicle, which is real estate or whatever it is that you're doing for income,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
you're the driver of the entire operation. That's the
Yeah.
blessing that I've learned over the years.
That's
Just
good.
being crystal clear on what you want, not what everybody else has, but what
Right.
you actually want,
That's
and then
good.
going after it.
Love it. Love it. Love it, man. Thank you, Jamel, for joining us on this episode. Yeah, there's so many nuggets, so many things that I know people are going to pick up. How can people stay connected with you?
Simple. I try to provide is a ton of value to people. On YouTube, you can check me at Jamel Gibbs. I think that's
Yeah.
where, if you want long form
No, you don't have to do
content.
long. I'll leave it. I'll have links for
Okay,
you.
cool. So
In
yeah,
the
just check me out on YouTube and Instagram or whatever. And
That's good
yeah,
stuff.
I hope I'm able to help you out.
That's good stuff. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode for Lessons to Blessings. Until next time, stay blessed.